thank you all for the invitation to come speak with you again and spend some time with you. This is really nice, and I appreciate the option for Zoom in these strange times. So, Mike and Eli, right? Elizabeth, Eli asked me to speak about festivals and things and other religious traditions that take place this time of year. And specifically, I think for this talk, maybe we could talk about Diwali some. So the Hindu Festival of Lights that takes place really all around the world, because there are Hindus all around the world. But of course, it's really centered in South Asia, so India and Nepal. So I'm going to be talking about that with you today. So I think because of the mic situation, instead of doing questions, I'm happy to take questions throughout if you'd like to pass the mic around, but if you can save it till the end as well, that might be just might make better use of our time so that you can then ask all the questions at once. And I'll save some time. We have until 10, right? About 10?
Yes, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, so I'll save some time for discussion as well. I have some images for you. If you know anything about Diwali and the Festival of Lights in Hinduism, it's very colorful. So I have some very colorful images to show you. Hopefully they won't be too bright on a Sunday morning. But anyway, so Diwali is, I'm going to say a few introductory words, and then I'm just going to pull up the slides. And so I'm going to be kind of a faceless voice over some slides for a long time, which is not ideal. But I haven't figured out on Zoom how to have I don't think I can have I can't be showing at one point and also show you the full slideshow. So feel free to jump in with the mic and ask a question if you need to, or tell me you can't see something. I can, of course, hear you when I have the slideshow going, but I won't. You won't be able to see me. But before I start the slideshow, just want to say, so Diwali it's a Sanskrit term. And as you know, the sacred language in Hinduism is Sanskrit. And so Diwali means, it kind of means festival of lights. Deepa, or deep, is a word for light. And Wali actually can mean friend or Lord. So it's the time of the lights. And so Diwali is one of the major religious festivals, probably one of the most significant for sure. Definitely one of the most celebratory and fun and jubilant kind of festivals within Hinduism. So I do want to note that the faith Sikhs, or those who follow the religion of Sikhism, and also Jains, those who follow the religion of Jainism, they also participate and do their own version of Diwali. But I'm going to be talking about Hinduism and Hindus' practice of Diwali today. So it's not all that different, but some of the myths behind it are a little distinctive, but I'll be focusing on Hinduism. So Diwali is a festival that coincides with the harvest season almost every year. So it's a different calendar in Hindu religion. And so that calendar, so Diwali will always fall on a little bit different time of year, but it's usually late October to early or mid-November. So different than, say, the way we celebrate Christmas or some other religions where it's always on the same calendar year. Of course, it's not the Gregorian calendar that Hindus are using, but they use a different calendar. And so it's somewhere going to be in October and November, but it always coincides with the harvest time. Okay. And also with New Year celebrations on the Hindu calendar. So in the most basic kind of overview sense, Diwali is about a triumph of good over evil and a restoration of balance in the universe. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. But the main metaphor that's used is that it's the triumph of light over darkness. So that's why you'll hear it referred to as the Festival of Lights. Not only are there literally lots of beautiful lights and lots of lamps and things, but that's a very strong, pervasive metaphor throughout the holidays, that it's the triumph of light over darkness, good over evil, order over disorder. Okay. So let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slides. Like I said, they're going to be quite colorful, and ask me any questions if you want as I go along. So let me see about sharing my screen here. Hold on. Always interesting to get this going. Okay, do you see the slide?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yes, okay. Not too bright? Okay, great. So you can see how Diwali is spelled in English. Of course, it doesn't look like that in the Hindi or the Sanskrit script, but this is how we spell Diwali here. And so I'll be talking about Diwali. And the reason that I add Diwali and fall festivals is that Diwali is actually the form of the holiday that's celebrated by Indians and in India. So I'm going to talk a lot about Nepal because, as many of you know, I've done a lot of research in Nepal. I travel regularly to Nepal. I'm married to a Nepali who's Hindu for, gosh, an awful long time, 20 plus years or something. So I'm going to speak a lot about Diwali in Nepal, which is called Tihar. It's called something different, and they have a little bit different rituals. So I'm going to take us through that. But yeah, Diwali means a row of lighted lamps. And during this festival, houses, shops, public places are decorated with small oil lamps called diyas. People do fireworks, they distribute sweets, and it's a very popular festival overall. So let's go ahead and get started with the images. Okay. So let's see. So let me go to this first. So what's the festival Diwali about in Hinduism? Well, it's in large part about these two Hindu deities. So I actually have the words reversed here because I wanted to give precedence to the goddess Sita, but the goddess Sita is on the right. You can the god is blue. That's Ram, and Sita is kind of fair skinned on the right. So the story in Diwali and in the Indian practice of this holiday is that it marks the return of these two deities, Ram and Sita, back to their hometown of Ayodhya, which is in contemporary North India, after they had been exiled for 14 years. So if any of you are familiar with this Hindu epic called the Ramayana, it's one of the most important pieces of religious literature in Hinduism. Ramayana, meaning the tale of Ram, is all about this story about Ram and Sita being banished to the forest because of issues with the inheritance of the kingdom of Ram's father. And so this holiday celebrates them returning to Ayodhya and returning in the restoration of order. So this is political order, religious order, cosmic order, etc. So this is the most fundamental meaning of the holiday, is that it's to recognize and to celebrate Ram and Sita and their return in this mythical story of the Ramayana. It's also to celebrate the day of another goddess called Durga and her destroying of the buffalo demon Mahisha. So if you know, in Hinduism, there are many different myths, many complex, fascinating stories that we call myths. And there's also this story of the goddess Durga, who's killed the buffalo demon Mahisha. So that's kind of the basic outline, or the kind of basic mythical foundation of the story of Diwali. So the reason that the lamps and light is so important is not just as a metaphor of good over evil and order, or cosmic order prevailing over disorder, but it's also literally that lamps were thought to help. Many lamps were lit, little butter lamps were lit to help Ram and Sita find their way back from exile in the forest to their home kingdom of Ayodhya. So I'm going to show you some great pictures of how the lamps are used in a little bit. But let's see. So I'm going to move on now to Tihar, or actually, let me show you a few more pictures. So let me just scroll through here real quick. Okay. So the same holiday is celebrated in Nepal. Okay. So Nepal, as you know, is just on the northern border of India, a much smaller country geographically, but the only other Hindu majority country in the world. And until just a decade and a half ago, was the only remaining Hindu kingdom in the world. So really longstanding Hindu religious practices we find in Nepal. And in Nepal, the holiday is called Tihar. So actually, hold on here. I'm going to scroll back up a minute. Here's the term that's used in Nepal, Tihar. And you can see it written here in the Sanskrit, Tihar. And during Tihar, again, which is very similar to Diwali in India, you have about 5 days of celebration. So Diwali is around 5 days of celebration as well. But in Nepal, it's pretty interesting because they get very specific in what they do on what days. So it's a 5 days of particular forms of worship. And this here is called a rangoli. I'm going to show you some more pictures of these. But this is one form of worship, is by creating these really elaborate kind of mandala type diagrams on the ground out of chalk. So women and families, mostly women, but families and children will spend days building these rangolis and painting these rangolis with using their hands, just taking chalk and creating these colorful images as a way to show their veneration of the goddess on this holiday. So the thing about Tihar that's pretty interesting is it's not only celebrated just in Nepal, but it's also celebrated in the other Himalayan parts of India, and such as Darjeeling and Kalimpong. So it's kind of, we could think of it as kind of a Himalayan way of celebrating Diwali. So just like Diwali, Tihar is marked by the lighting of different little diyas or little butter lamps, both inside and outside of the home. I'm going to show you some pictures of that in a little bit. But unlike Diwali, Tihar has this extra element of, it includes celebration and worship of four different creatures who are associated with the Hindu god of death, or Yama. Okay. So I want to show you some of those. So let me scroll through these. So the first day of Tihar, the first day is called Kag Tihar, and Kag means crow in Sanskrit and in Nepali. And so people offer worship or venerate the crow. Okay, now this might sound kind of strange to you, but we're going to go through 5 days of different things that Hindus will worship. Now, they're not worshiping them as God per se, but rather showing veneration to them, recognizing the life in them, recognizing the spirit in them, and also seeking protection from them. So the thing about crows, or the Kag, is, which is one of the first words that children learn when they're learning when they're learning Nepali or Sanskrit, is that the crow is associated with different calamities. And so with bad things happening, you don't really want, a crow usually brings on some sense of something that is foreboding or that's going to happen that's not good. So the idea is that sweets and flowers are offered to crows on this day, on Kag Tihar, in order to help ward off any calamities that a crow might bring. It's crows and ravens, actually. So they're thought to have some kind of special association with negative events. So people will offer sweets and flowers. And that's a theme we see throughout Tihar and throughout Diwali and throughout Hindu worship, in fact, is that when you want to show veneration to something, when you want to worship something and recognize the divinity in something or someone, you offer flowers, you offer sweets, you offer a little mark of red powder on the forehead, which I'll be showing you images of, and you offer prayers. So this is what's done on the first day of Tihar in Nepal. It's called Kag Tihar. Okay? The other thing about crows that I should mention is they're seen as they're believed in some sense to carry the message of death. So remember, all 4 of these animals have something to do with the god of death, and crows are seen to carry the message that death may be impending. So it's good to offer veneration to the crow. Okay, so the second day of Tihar is arguably one of the most fun, and one that is that I just can look at endless images of this online. You could look up Kukur Puja online when you get home if you want to see all kinds of fabulous pictures of dogs who have been offered veneration. So as you can see here, these are these furry creatures have been offered flowers and butter lamps, and they're offered kind of dog versions of sweets. And notice the colored powder on their fur. Those are that's how people bless them. We'll see that that's done with humans as well. But the idea is also that dogs are thought to be messengers of the god of death, but they're also recognized to be just kind of loving creatures in people's midst. And so people will put wreaths of these marigolds around their necks, as you can see, and tika on their foreheads. So tika is this little red dots you'll see on the dog's foreheads. So kukur is the word for dog in Nepali. It's quite something to see all these dogs with all these blessings being given on this day. So that is Kukur Puja. Now, on the same day as Kukur Puja, the third day of puja is then, is Lakshmi Puja, which is arguably the most important day of Tihar as it's celebrated. And you're going to see Lakshmi is the goddess. Hold on as I scroll back up. I don't want to make any of you feel kind of seasick with all these images, but I want to take you back up here. This is the goddess Lakshmi here on the right, and she's with her male consort, the god Vishnu, on her left. Okay. Now, some of you might remember from other talks that I've given or other things you just read about comparative religions that the god Vishnu has different avatars, right? Different incarnations. And these different incarnations come down to earth to restore order and balance. Well, one of Vishnu's main incarnations is, lo and behold, the Lord Ram. And this holiday is in part about Ram and Sita and them returning back to Ayodhya to restore balance to the universe. So Vishnu is important in that way, but then Vishnu's consort here on the right is the goddess Lakshmi. And remember, almost always the Hindu understandings of the divine and understandings of God are binary in the sense that you have a female goddess and you have a male god. And usually divinity is understood in that way as having feminine dimensions and masculine dimensions. And so Ram and Sita are an example of that. Lakshmi and Vishnu are an example of that. So Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth and prosperity. Okay. So she's associated with material wealth, with all kinds of material prosperity. You can tell from all the gold that she's wearing and that he's wearing that makes them that, she could be associated with that. And so here's another image of Lakshmi and Vishnu. And so on this day, on day 3 of Tihar, people do worship to the goddess Lakshmi. So I'm going to go back to this slide, and people will offer, it's usually the women in the household, almost always, because women in this traditional sense are considered as kind of ritually and religiously responsible for the prosperity of the household. So you'll have women doing elaborate rituals, venerating Lakshmi that look a little bit like this. So you see these butter lamps on the corners. You see the beautiful rangoli, or the kind of the diagram that's here on the ground. This doesn't look like it's made of chalk. This looks like, actually it looks like it is. It might be made of chalk, and then it's surrounded by a marigold trim. You'll see an image of Lakshmi here on the left in that little framed photograph. You see fruit to the right. These are sweets that are being offered to her. You see that the woman is wearing lots of red bangles. Those are considered auspicious for Hindu women, and thought to help ensure the longevity of their husbands' lives and their families' lives. And so lots of rituals are done to worship the goddess Lakshmi on this day to ensure that wealth and prosperity comes into the household. In fact, if you're in Nepal during this festival, and most of my sister-in-laws do this, I have one sister-in-law who's amazing at this, is they will even make chalk imprints of kind of mock footprints all the way from the gate of their compound into their home, all the way into the center of their house, as a way to kind of lead Lakshmi into the house, kind of pathway into the house, so that she can bring wealth and prosperity into the family. So a lot of elaborate work here on Lakshmi Puja. Let me see if I have another picture. Yeah, this is another picture of a rangoli that was done in Nepal for Lakshmi. So this looks like it's done with grains of some sort. And notice the butter lamps around it. This is all meant to invite the goddess Lakshmi into the community and into the home to bring prosperity. Marigolds are associated through and through with this season, just like we might associate poinsettias with the winter holidays or Christmas, but even more so, I would say, with marigolds. They're essential for creating, as you can see here on the right, the kind of what they call a mala in Hinduism, but we might call a garland of marigolds. Here are some girls in their household doing puja to Lakshmi. So notice again the kind of chalk design that they've created as a way to worship Lakshmi. Notice the butter lamps. Children will often wear, their best clothes. Everyone will dress up. It's a very celebratory time, of course. Okay. And then also on day 3, not only do we have Lakshmi Puja, which is very important, but we have Gai Puja or cow puja. So puja means, I should have said this earlier, but puja is just the worship ceremony, the way that you worship or show veneration to someone or to something. So puja is using these butter lamps and offering the tika and all these things, offering the fruit, offering the sweets. And so Gai Puja is a very big deal as well, because cows are sacred, as you know, in Hinduism, but they're sacred in large part because of what they historically have brought to the community, which is sustenance through milk and the milk products that are made from their milk. So this is another way that Hindus will show reverence for all of the living things around them. Again, they're not worshiping. I mean, they are worshiping the cow, but they're worshiping the cow for the kind of benefit that it brings to the community and the kind of life that it inhabits when it provides the life nourishing milk to the community. So I like this image because it shows you a number of the ritual implements. You see this garland of marigolds that's put around the cow's head. You see the red tika on its fur, at its forehead. You see the banana. Bananas are one of the forms of sweets or fruit that are offered. And you see all the things on the ground as well. So you see some ritual leaves and rice grains that are used and other butter lamps. Notice the red bangles on the woman's wrist as well. So the cow is also, interestingly, associated with the goddess Lakshmi. So every goddess and god is considered to have a vahana, or a vehicle, some sort of animal that they're associated with. And Lakshmi's animal is the cow, because again, prosperity, wealth. You can think about the importance of cows in a village, and how if you have more cows, you probably have more wealth, because you can generate the money from selling the milk. You can make sweets from the milk. You can feed your children with the milk. So hence Hindus revere the cow in this way. So they'll do puja to the cow. Okay. And here's an image of Gai Puja or cow puja being done in a village. So you see the garlands again around the neck, extra food being given to them, etc. So, okay. And the 4th day is I don't think I have any images of it. Oh, here's another of the cows being off, who have been given the garlands and the tika, who've been done puja too. So I don't think I have a picture of the 4th day, which is to the oxen, which is generally to oxen, to recognize the importance of the work they do in the fields in the harvest season. So people will do the similar type of veneration to them. It was the 5th day. That's the day that I'm going to talk about now, which is a lot of fun, and which was just, I think it was yesterday, which we're about 12 hours behind from that part of the world. But so it was yesterday, a day and a half ago. But that's called Bhai Tika. So Bhai means younger brother, but sometimes it's just used to mean brother. And it's really, really important in Hindu culture that the relationship between siblings be maintained and be respected. And it's very important. Hierarchy within the family is very important in Hinduism. So the grandmother and grandfather have the highest level of status. Their children, even when they're adults, way into adulthood, are always supposed to venerate and do as their parents ask, and the same thing all the way down the line. So in line with the really important aspect of family relationships and the hierarchy of kind of authority and wisdom within the family is a focus on the importance of the relationship between siblings, particularly between brothers and sisters. So Bhai Tika is a day that's pretty fascinating because it's about the sisters, quote unquote, worshiping the brothers. Now, sisters and girls do get something out of this as well. So it's not just a one-way street. But here you're seeing, and this is actually my family. So this is my son here to the left with the hoodie on. It's my husband in the corner looking kind of like an old man laughing with his hat on and his garland. And then my son's two cousins, actually 3 cousins across from him. And because of the way that families are structured in Nepal, and the cousins are kind of considered first, actually siblings. And that's because in traditional Nepali society, it's a patrilineal household, and the sons remain in the household as adults, and their wives move into the houses with them. So so in my husband's family, for example, there are 3 sons. And of course, my husband lives here in the US, but his other 2 brothers for many years lived in the house that his parents raised them in. And his wives move into the house, and they raise their children in that same house. So those the children's children grow up like they're like brothers and sisters, even though we would think of them as cousins in this culture. So first cousins are really understood to be more like first kind of brothers and sisters. So the image here you see is of 3 first cousins of my son, but we consider them like sisters. So you can see that they have their hands together in the form of namaste. And in Nepal, they often say something different. They say darshan, which is very similar, but it means it's a sign of respect and mostly respect. And so they're doing namaste or darshan to him. He's doing darshan to them. Of course, this was, I think, the first year of COVID, so everybody's masked even outside. And they are about to do the rituals that you see all the ritual implements of there in between them. So let me show you some more pictures of this. So, actually, this is a different year. So I'm going to have to move back up a little bit. Okay, let me show you these different images. So I'm going to jump around some. So this is another year. This is on this picture on the left. This is my husband on the left, and then his good friend Tulu on the right. And they are best friends from their early 20s, and Tulu was visiting from out of town. So anytime there's anybody around, they can be substituted in for a brother or sister. Okay. So Tulu was asked to participate in this with us, and you can see, I want to show you, again, we're looking at the picture on the left. You can see all the fruit in the bananas, the apples, the pistachios and things in that container. Then you see a garland of flowers. They're not marigolds, but they're flowers. And then if you can see, I don't know how big your screen is, but there's some ritual implements there to the left. There's a little butter lamp. There's some Q-tips that they're going to apply the blessing powder with. And then you can barely see this, but there's a water pitcher as well. So what's going to happen is what you see part of on the right here. And that is, hold on, cursor here. And that is the sisters are going to take the Q-tip and dip it in some of this powder that you see here and offer different dots on the forehead that represent different blessings. Then they're going to take the pitcher of water and they're going to circumambulate the brothers by dripping a little bit of water on the floor. I don't remember how many times they do that, but they do it a number of ritual times. And as a way to protect the brothers and circle them with auspiciousness and love and blessings. And then they're going to offer the brothers this fruit and these nuts and sweets and things. And then the brothers are going to offer the sisters an envelope with money in it. So there is a trade-off. Here, again, we see this. So this is several years ago. This is my son in the blue. These are 2 of his cousins. This is in McLean, Virginia. So Hindus will do this, regardless of where they are. And you can see my son is putting the tika on his cousin. Everybody's laughing because they grew up in America. They don't know exactly what to do. And if you can imagine, all the parents are shouting in the background going, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. So they're all laughing, trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. But you can see here in the picture on the left, the 2 girls have a little envelope in their hands. That's money that they're given by the brothers. And you can see they're all looking pretty happy because there's going to be a big meal afterwards. Here's some more images so you can see it closer up. You can see on the left the different colorful tika dots on there that are the blessings that are being offered. And you can see the garland and so forth. So, and then at the end, again, usually there's, a big meal and celebration, lots of photographs, etc. So I'll show you a few more images and then we can open it up for questions. Now this is, I just pulled up the Getty images from there's some really, really neat things here. Just ignore the fact that this is actually for ordering prints, but I wanted to show you some of these. For Diwali, just like whereas Christmas, you might send Christmas cards, people will send Diwali cards. So these are things that people can order online and send them to their family members. You can see here, this would be the goddess Lakshmi. This was the god Ganesh, which I haven't shown you pictures of, but you can see some of the same things even in this card that we just talked about. You can see the fruit, you can see the little lamps, you can see the sweets, etc. Here's another image. Let me get to something else too. I wanted to show you these lamps. So often, in the evening when people go to the temple, they'll light these really beautiful battis or lamps. And so these are little bits of cotton that people have created wicks out of and put into these clay pots. They're really beautiful. So they're called oil lamps. They're just pour oil in these, and they'll put lights like this all around their households and put them all around the temple to welcome the goddess into their spaces. And there are lots of other images I could show you here. I'll just show you a couple more. This is a very, very modest corner of a household in which someone is doing puja, is doing the worship of the goddess. So you can see the fruit, you can see the lights, you can see the powder that's used for the blessings. So the same ritual implements, whether you're in a very wealthy, opulent household or you're in a more modest one, you will see the same type of ritual implements. So I think I'll stop sharing my screen there and we can open it up to any questions, thoughts. We have about 9 minutes or so, 10 minutes. I can certainly stay if anyone wants to talk for longer.
Oh, Ed.
Sorry. In several of the pictures of the male gods, there was the right hand with the finger pointed upward, and surrounding the finger looked like a galaxy or a circle of some sort. Yeah. It appeared in several of those images. Can you explain what that is, please?
Yeah, that's a discus, which is an image that you often see in these gods' hands for some reason. They all have different usually weapons or ritual implements. So they generally represent strength, things that can be thrown in a battle, that can be used in a battle. The discus is kind of an outdated one. The symbolic meaning of that circular object or the discus is wisdom. That's typically what you would encounter, is that the kind of circle represents a kind of holistic wisdom. There are we could go, I won't pull it up, but there are other things like a mace. There are a bow and arrow in Ram's hands, but it's good it's a good observation that circular disc is present for both of them. And one, because Ram is an avatar of Vishnu, so they would have similar symbols in their hands. And
a follow-up to that, in none of the female depictions was there a weapon that I could see or a symbol like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if I had given you an image of the goddess Kali or the goddess Durga, you would see weapons in their hands. And and it's a great question because it gives me an opportunity to I didn't say this before, but so there are goddesses that are considered benign, and then there are goddesses they're not malevolent, but they're kind of the harsh form of benign. They're the warriors. So there are warrior goddesses, and then there are kind of the more domesticated goddesses. Interestingly, the warrior goddesses tend to not have a male counterpart. And the more domesticated, docile goddesses are the ones like Lakshmi and Sita, the two that I showed you, who are associated with prosperity of the household, balance of the household, etc.
It occurs to me that this is a very intimate set of rites, direct connection with the gods in pictures and symbols and food and in activity. which is quite different from what we do in Christianity, except for communion, for example. Anyway, I'm done.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's really interesting. Yeah, that you can see how direct that connection is. Yeah, it's a great observation.
Keep it till the next camera.
Any other questions?
Good morning. I think a year or two ago, you explained the symbolism of the swastika and how it predated the German use of the swastika, but I did not remember the response. Can you reiterate what that means in the religion and then how it was mistaken?
Yeah, great point. Because you probably saw it there on the Getty images, right? Probably jogged your memory on that. So the swastika, so it's a Sanskrit term, swa. So swa means SWA or SVA means one's own. And then tika means blessing, or it can even be self. So one's own self. So it's a blessing of one's own self is one way to think about the term swastika in Sanskrit and Hindi. And it's actually associated with the goddess Lakshmi, who we were talking about today. So, for example, in my mother and sister-in-laws have these things that everyone has in South Asia, or families that have the ability to have. So they have what's called a godrej. It's like a big metal chest or armoire in one's room. Sounds kind of strange, but I think they were manufactured in the 50s and 60s, and a number of families got them it's the only place in the house where you can keep belongings secure, like jewelry, family jewelry, maybe extra money, children, the astrological charts that children are given when they're born. And I mention it because on every one of the godrejes that I've seen in my family's household that the women maintain, and they're always back in a closet, there are several swastikas on them. Now they're the flip of the swastika that Hitler and the Nazi party used. So the Hitler and the Nazis flipped it over. So it's actually the reverse image. But when Hindus use it, and when my sister-in-laws use it, when you see it all over India and Nepal and in Hindu context, it means wealth and prosperity. That's what it means. It means it's a symbol of just general prosperity in both the spiritual sense and also in a material sense. So it's associated with Lakshmi. And then, of course, it got appropriated or misappropriated as part of the kind of Indo-Aryan push that Hitler and the Nazi Party was, they were trying symbolically to use these Indo-Aryan symbols because Sanskrit is an Indo-European language. India is thought in ways to be, or the parts of Northwest India to be part of the original kind of home to the original Indo-European groups of peoples who then migrated through the Atlas Mountains and into Europe. So that's my very brief answer on what it means. But it's the exact opposite of what it conjures in us now is the exact opposite of what it conjures for Hindus who see it as a great blessing of fortune.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question.
Yes.
In one of the slides, there were square flags flying in the background. I don't remember which one it was.
Do you remember anything else in the image?
No.
Okay.
But
Let me look.
they're called prayer flags, I believe.
Oh, did you see, were there prayer flags? Yeah, there might have been.
Yes.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Oh, okay. Anyway, let me know what is the question? I'll look for it.
These flags have a role to play too, don't they, in the Hindu religion? Or am I confusing that with Buddhism?
You're probably confusing it with Buddhism. Although there are flags of different sorts that have significance in Hinduism, but I think is this what you were looking at? Is this what you were?
Yes, those are triangular shaped flags.
Right.
Those are flags. And there was one other image that I thought had flags too. Okay, but you've answered the question. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, you're thinking probably of Buddhist prayer flags, which are very significant, and they're covered with Tibetan prayers, Buddhist prayers on them, and they are believed to release blessings and prayers into the heavens, into the universe when they flap in the wind. Those triangular ones were really just kind of decorative, colorful things. Yeah, but you do see flags with important symbolism on Hindu temples, but they're typically triangular in Hinduism, whereas they're typically rectangular in Buddhism.
Triangular, rectangular. Okay.
Yeah.
My nephew is married to a Nepali.
Oh, right.
And,
I think you told me that.
Trying to get a little knowledge that I can surprise her with.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
so
you.
ask her. So do they celebrate Tihar at all? Do you know?
They do a lot of celebrations. Yes, they do.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now what could you ask them? Okay, let's come up with something you want to say to really impress them. What did you learn?
I would say, well, I'm glad you don't have the square prayer flags up.
How about do they have a dog?
Yes. I don't know if they decorate the dog too, but I suspect that they do.
You could ask them, say, did you do tikka to your dog? You could do that. Did you give tikka to your dog? Yeah.
No, we got it. Anybody at home on Zoom with questions for Megan? Okay. Well, the hour has arrived.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's very interesting. We appreciate everything that you've done, and we're looking forward to what we're going to see in a couple of weeks.
Well, great. Thank you all for being here. And I hope that, I hope this was useful and fun for you and gave you something interesting to think about, if nothing else, in terms of contrasts. Yeah. So have a wonderful day, everyone.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Same to you.
Bye.